Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today, this NextFlex hosted webinar on AI for hybrid electronics. We'll be talking about the outcomes from our June workshop on the same topic, and also give some discussion of what's coming next. I'm Scott Miller. I'm the Director of Technology at NextFlex, and this webinar will be presented, co-presented with my colleague, Dr. Nick Morris, our Deputy Director of Technology. Before we actually get started, though, I do want to acknowledge the sponsorship of the Department of Defense operating through the Air Force Research Lab with funding from the DoD Mantech program. So this webinar is our opinions and not representing those of the government. Within the webinar today, we'll talk a bit about NextFlex. We do have a large number of non-NextFlex members registered for the event and in attendance. But we'll go through that quickly. And then what we'll do is talk about opportunities for AI and hybrid electronics. We'll talk about the workshop key findings and strategic opportunities, and then give you a view into what's next. What are we working on, as well as where do we see this field evolving? And finally, we'll wrap up with time for Q&A from the audience. So looking forward to having that discussion with you then. So to kick it off, about NextFlex. NextFlex is a public-private partnership. We're a manufacturing innovation institute whose mission is to create a strong U.S. industrial base for hybrid electronics. We do this by focusing on three pillars. The first is advancing technology and manufacturing, working across the industrial base to make sure that we are pushing the technology of hybrid electronics forward, investing in the critical elements of that technology, and ensuring that we're focused on industrially relevant technology development. The next piece, the next pillar, is establishing and growing a U.S. manufacturing and industrial base, working with regional supply chains, working with key manufacturing partners, as well as OEMs and other customers for the technology to invest for a long-term national impact. And finally, securing human capital, ensuring that we have the workforce that we need, all the way from technician level through advanced researchers to be able to secure our manufacturing capability for today and the future. All of this is underpinned by transitioning technologies into both commercial and industrial applications across the industrial base. So what is hybrid electronics? Make sure we're grounded in a common understanding of what we mean by that phrase. Hybrid electronics combines additive electronics manufacturing with electronics assembly. So things like printed electronics technologies with discrete assembled with discrete components, things like thin semiconductor devices, or surface mount device technology. We use this to make a whole host of types of devices, whether those be flexible or stretchable or rigid or structurally integrated, in applications ranging from edge devices with machine learning, aerospace and automotive applications, wearable and medical devices, RF and communications, semiconductor packaging, and a whole host of other application areas. As a manufacturing institute, we work in a lot of different activities. We have our consortium, which has members, more than 200 organizational members from the United States government, industry, and academia across the US. We hold regular communications and webinars such as this one, workshops. We held a workshop just 2 weeks ago in Huntsville, Alabama, and other types of events. Within our technical community, we have 11 technical working groups that develop 5-year forward-looking roadmaps, which we update every year with that community, that really identify the state of the art, identify what the current needs are, the future needs, and validate those needs against market opportunities. We then take that information, prioritize those gaps, and use that to drive investments that we make in what we call project calls, funding available for the industry and academic organizations to partner together to push the technology and the manufacturing capability forward. We have our nationwide workforce development programs focused on K-12 STEM education all the way up to incumbent workforce training. And when we were stood up more than 10 years ago, the concept was not just to coordinate this industrial base, but also to be a part of it. So we have our technology hub in San Jose, California, at which we design and prototype hybrid electronic devices, anything from material testing and qualification to first-of-a-kind prototype development, all the way out to through low-rate manufacturing, with the goal of transitioning that manufacturing out into the industry. All right, so now on to the topic for today's webinars, opportunities for AI and hybrid electronics. As we're all well aware, applications of artificial intelligence are having an impact across every industry. In hybrid electronics, we've been looking at this for quite a while, identifying what those opportunities are. Some of the key opportunities that we see in hybrid electronics include things like boosting design and manufacturing efficiencies. How can we take AI technologies and accelerate the design of electronic circuits, accelerate circuit layout, optimize toolpaths for manufacturing, and really reduce the qualification time as well? So going from concept to a manufacturable design in a minimum amount of time. Second question that we're asking is, how can we improve product reliability and yield? So things such as leveraging predictive models of reliability, predictive manufacturing simulation with in situ process control so that we can reduce rework and downtime, so that we can accelerate the rate at which new materials find their way into the manufacturing factories and can more rapidly bring products to market. We can enable smarter and more adaptive devices, driving innovation in edge computing, wearables, and embedded intelligence. The idea here is that there are plenty of opportunities for installing AI and machine learning techniques onto these low-powered edge devices that are manufactured through hybrid electronics techniques to push them out and supply vast quantities of data into further AI systems that sit off of the edge. One of the big challenges that we see and hear from our members is the challenge that small manufacturers face in applying AI technologies to their work. So one of the things we do that we're seeking to do is to lower the barriers through shared tools and data models and pilot programs so that small manufacturers and small businesses in general have an opportunity to take advantage of these new and emerging technologies coming that are AI enabled. Finally, we want to make sure that we're strengthening U.S. industrial base resilience, improving things like supply chain insights and accelerating technology transitions. We see the opportunities all across many industries in how AI can improve logistics and can improve supply chains, provide insights into upcoming interruptions, for example. And so this is certainly true within the hybrid electronics industrial base, and we're looking to advance that forward. So what have we done so far? Over the last more than a year at this point, both Nick and I have had conversations with many members and non-member organizations to really understand what is the landscape within this technology area. In 2024, we began adding into our road mapping process a focus on AI technologies, gathering input from within the existing technical working groups and identifying that capability in those 2024 roadmaps. In January, we developed a topic for our most recent project call, our project call number 10, topic 10.2, focused on AI and machine learning for design, manufacturing, and qualification of hybrid electronics. That was the topic title for that. And when the proposals were received in late spring, there was very strong interest from across industry and academia. We got 10 proposals and had many conversations along the way to receiving those 10 proposals. One of the projects was selected. That project has been identified to the NextFlex membership and will be announced publicly once contracting is complete in the next few weeks, hopefully. We then held a workshop in June, concurrent with the TechBlick conference in Boston, at which half-day workshop at which we brought together this community and really had a discussion about what are these opportunities. We presented what we saw at that point, what we had been hearing from members and non-members, and drove a lot of discussion about the topic among the attendees at that workshop. And so today we'll be presenting out the results we have from that. And we've really been plotting a course forward based on all of that input we received. Right now, one of the commitments we've made is to develop a dedicated hybrid electronics AI roadmap, really motivating the future activity and investments that we'll be making, and hopefully identifying opportunities to secure additional funding. So at that June workshop, we held on June 10th, we had two keynotes, one from Mason Glidden, the Chief Product and Engineering Officer at Tulip Interfaces, talking about industrial AI and supply chain logistics applications for AI in particular. And the second from Dr. Kasha Gafarzadeh, the CEO of TechBlick, whose conference we were hosting this in concurrence with. And he really gave an overview of hybrid electronics technologies globally and advancements that have been happening. But the main part of that event focused on two different breakouts that we held in parallel to each other. The first focused on design to deployment, looking at the design, the supply chain, and the edge devices. And I chaired that session. And then the second focused on materials, process, and manufacturing, which Nick Morris hosted, looking at manufacturing, material development optimization, and process and automated test and qualification. All right, at this point, I'll hand over to Nick, and he'll be presenting some of the results of that workshop.
Thank you, Scott. Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. So as Scott said, we had a great workshop back in June. I'm here over the next 6 or so slides to really highlight some of the, not only the opportunities, but some of the wants and needs of our community that we had at the workshop, to really share sort of what their insights are of where their organizations are working to implement AI, or I think more importantly, where the thirst for more knowledge of where they could be applied and where the real benefits are. So I'm going to step you through the next several slides. Hopefully they're informative, and they've been really informative to us, as well as all of those conversations we've been having on an individual basis and through the project called 10 process, to really start to hone in and shape our idea for this roadmap that we're putting together. So Scott, if you start on the next slide. So the first, looking specifically at tool maturity and integration gaps. So this was, we had the breakout looking at design to implementation, the other materials, process, manufacturing. These are really combining a lot of the same concepts into these 6 key points. The first, tool maturity. As expected, it was really considered that, you know, today, all of these are really early stage. The AI landscape is rapidly evolving. I think, as everyone is aware, that it's been a little over 2 years now since ChatGPT first dropped, and we are trying to figure out how it's going to impact every aspect of our lives. People are moving quickly. We're trying to figure out, you know, within some narrow scope where it could make an impact, but an overall landscape, especially in electronics manufacturing, hasn't been figured out yet. So a little bit of unknown in terms of you know, at this stage, where the impacts are going to be, especially in the near term. Because of that, there's also a big lack of end-to-end integration. A lot of the benefits in terms of efficiencies, performance, they're going to be achieved through fully connected, you know, digital threads, through design, materials selection, materials development, process optimization, ultimately to test, implementation of these edge devices potentially. All of that needs to have a common digital thread. We're not there yet, as each of these parts continue to be stood up and evolve. But that's really the interest, is ultimately understanding what's the end state going to look like and how do we get there. And that's what we're trying to put together in our roadmap. Also, it's going to, a lot of the tools right now still require a lot of manual validation. You know, I've used a lot of AI and ML tools in sort of my business operations and personal life, and understand that it makes a lot of mistakes. It makes up a lot of things sometimes, and there's still a lot of hand holding. It's not an autonomous system in a lot of cases that you can initially trust. And to be fully scalable, to be reliable in a production setting, those are going to need to be worked out. So we need to continue to have manual validation at this point, but understand what full automation actually looks like and how do we get there. And to do that, we're going to have common benchmarks. So how do we assess the tool performance in the same way, the robustness, the ROIs that it has specifically for electronics manufacturing, hybrid electronics manufacturing, trying to take in and understand what those KPIs are and what data we need to be able to train up particular tools to be able to get to that endpoint that we're looking in tool maturity. And finally, there's a lot of interest from the participants, because it's so early stage, a lot of interest and knowledge of what's out there, what's being successfully implemented, even at a small scale, so others can learn and build and share their tools, is shared demonstrations, potentially pilot projects. Some of these things that when NextFlex was founded a little over 10 years ago, the idea was we need to show that hybrid electronics are possible. Now the idea is the same thing for how do we implement AI and ML tools successfully in hybrid electronics design, manufacturing, all of the aspects of that. Just some short projects, some demonstrations to really show the potential power as we work to mature and scale these tools. Scott, if you can go to the next slide. So the second opportunity, and maybe a threat or a risk that a lot of people are considering, is intellectual property protections and data right protections. That was a huge concern from all the participants of the breakout, really expressing the concerns about data ownership, leakage of data, misuse of data, as we look to share data to these models, large language models or other AI models, to really share the data, but make sure it's used in the proper way. We're not training tools that we're not supposed to, and let the data can get out. So that's both on the data security, but also intellectual property frameworks as well. So really trying to understand what that looks like and being as cautious as possible at this stage, where it's a little bit of a wild west in some cases of what the data rights look like for these tools as they're rapidly developing. There's an absence of a clear framework for IP management. And we specifically talked about the idea that, from a material supplier, a material developer standpoint, utilizing AI to develop new materials, develop new formulations. Maybe the AI spits out a formulation you should try, and that turns out to be, innovative step, novel, non-obvious, and patentable. Who owns that IP, and who is the inventor of that? Given a suggestion from an artificial intelligence, we're not going to solve that by any means, but it's an important consideration as we're looking to these tools to be more of a collaborator in these environments of what the implications are, both from a business standpoint, from a legal standpoint, and from a data security standpoint. Again, this was echoed, especially from our smaller manufacturers that don't necessarily have the legal resources, considerations, but especially with our partnership with the Department of Defense of understanding the risks and the high bar in terms of data security that we need to maintain. That's why there's an interest in terms of maybe standardizing agreements or at least having best practices, maybe under the umbrella for NextFlex members, for example. We have a participation agreement and IP policy, assessing that to make sure that we're properly covering, use of these tools, sharing of the data in that way, having some sort of best practices. So it's not an ad hoc every time we look at potentially implementing something, having this long legal review cycle and understanding exactly what the risks are, which is incredibly important. But to be able to move quickly, we need to be able to take down those barriers more rapidly. And then finally, along those same lines, posed by some of the participants, maybe NextFlex could act as a neutral party in some of that to facilitate some of those at least initial discussions of putting together some best practices, some governance discussion, just within our community, the hybrid electronics world of what that looks like in terms of the tools and the data sharing. Scott, if you go to the next slide. So the third one really focus on making sure we have an educated workforce and that we have competency in AI. And that's what, again, so many of us are learning every day, another potential opportunity to use it, whether it is in our technical role or in business operations or in personal life. There's really a thirst for sharing those success stories, having that knowledge sharing for organizations where, they know their organization. If they're from a large organization, they know people in their company are working on these things of collecting the data, building out potential models, or utilizing commercial tools, but there's not a lot of data sharing or sharing of that information, what's been successful. Smaller companies are looking to others who have more resources to share some of that information. So again, it's all about knowledge sharing, because there's a bit of a paralysis. And I know I've experienced this myself of just initially playing with tools like ChatGPT of like, where do I start? Like, where do I implement it? What's successful? What's not? I don't want to waste time. And that seems to be at least as of June and through continued conversation, there seems to be a lot of considerations of, we don't know what we don't know. We don't really know where to begin. So looking for someone or an organization or collective group to come together and vet some of these tools, understand some of the benefits and potentially opportunities, and share those as frequently and as openly as possible, was really seen as an opportunity and something that would be very valuable to the industrial base. Also, strong demand for sharing those use cases that are very practical. Those are domain-specific training. There's a lot out there in AI generally, but where does that specifically apply to manufacturing? Where does that specifically apply to EDA and design tools for electronics? That's really the key and where the value is of not just broad AI knowledge, but domain-specific to the areas that the community is interested in. And sharing those ones, especially hands-on examples. I think those are the ones that have the most value in being able to share, like, here's a specific case of a design that was we could more efficiently design this complex circuit layout because we use these AI tools. We have these case studies, we have these vetted tools. And again, it was looked at as NextFlex, as we've done this for the hybrid electronics community broadly. as being a potential curator of some of these educational opportunities and informational sharing through things like webinars and short courses. And we'll have some more information on that here at in a couple of slides. Scott, go to the next one, please. So with those two groups focused on design implementation and those focused on materials and process development, they really shared a lot of similarity in terms of identifying where the really high value use cases are, at least in the near term, or at least where we think they're going to be. That could change, but really identifying what the low hanging fruit is and where the biggest impact would come from. And that's where we have some use cases there, and we've already kind of highlighted them, but just to reiterate sort of maybe the top four is AI-driven circuit layouts, especially coming from the world of rigid planar. And we know there's a lot of tools out there, a lot of interest in development in the semiconductor fabrication, semiconductor packaging, traditional PCB world of tools that they're implementing out there for those. Those aren't specialized for hybrid electronics. It's our understanding we can leverage some of those tools likely to be able to implement them into the printed additive world. But once we go into complex 3D conformal, it's much more niche, and it's going to take a lot more specialized and domain-specific applications. But there's a lot of value there in terms of utilizing AI to develop these very complex 3D geometries that really show the huge value proposition and advantages that additive approaches have to electronics. But it takes data generation, it takes model development to get there. So that's seen as a huge potential benefit of leverage what the planar rigid world of EDA where we can, but it's going to take some specialized development as well. But there's a lot of potential impact there. Next, process optimization, toolpath generation. Similarly, going to the complex conformal surfaces, process optimization for different ink systems, different substrates. A lot of opportunity there. We have a lot of data. It's siloed, it's parsed, but how do we utilize the data that the community has already generated to more quickly train up these tools that we can use it into, we can get to a usable a system and level more rapidly. Another one that's interesting on the sort of other end is looking at automated test and qualification. It's one thing to more rapidly select a material based on the requirements you're looking for and have a tool guide you and do some of the rapid experimentation and get to manufacturing. But another huge area of opportunity is having more automated test qualification, working towards understanding predictive reliability to have a more robust, higher performing, more reliable system, and having the data to support that and understand what you're working towards, validating quick, more rapid qualification certification through this manufacturing process is going to be key as well. So that's another opportunity. And finally, predictive maintenance anomaly detection. And that goes with, again, generating a lot of data so we can build these models to understand long-term reliability and even in harsh environments, but also edge devices for asset monitoring, health monitoring of different platforms and systems, looking for anomaly detection of these long duration use of these electronic circuits to understand, something might fail before it actually does in a catastrophic way. There's another opportunity. Again, a lot of this goes back to a lot of data generation, a lot of data analysis. But I think the community is really poised to be able to build those, again, under the right guardrails and framework to make sure that everyone's protected. And finally, those are the ones that we're really seeing, and that's what we tried to frame the discussion at the workshop for the most part. Obviously, we want to understand what the end state is, where we want to be in 2 to 5 years of having these tools, but it's important to understand where the real return on investment is in the near term, because a lot of these organizations are starting to make investments, but to make a big impact, it's going to need to be significant to make a near-term impact. And sharing the knowledge, sharing that in a pre-competitive level is very important to be able to do that and justify the ROI. It really will move the community along and strengthen the industrial base more rapidly. You go to the next slide. Second to last one, similar to sort of non-standardization, given it's a bit of a new and nascent industry in AI tools itself, but the ecosystem is fragmented. So those tools, those data sets, as I mentioned, they're siloed. The workflows that within the NextFlex Institute, we have all of our members and our government partners that have these workflows that have been successful to them. They've been shared sort of either one-on-one or in a repository of technical reports, but making sure that we have sort of optimization of system-wide availability to the data, I think is going to be key to be able to move more quickly. Similarly to lack of standards for data formats, APIs, things like that, it's critical. That's something we learned a couple of years ago in terms of just putting together a simple database in terms of materials and process data. Having that standardization of data on the onset is very important to have a functional data set, and a model development in this case is very important. Again, a lot of that's done manually now. So trying to get there on all aspects of being able to interface between design, manufacturing, testing, having that digital through line is going to be very important to speed up the adoption of these tools. And again, small, mid-sized manufacturers are especially challenged by that. We want to really focus on them to really sort of democratize some of these tools wherever we can, at least these solutions, these data sets, because they don't necessarily have the resources, but they can be agile and adopt some of these maybe more than some of the larger organizations. And so to tackle all of those, really trying to align the industrial base, align this community, that's really what's spurring the interest in putting together this AI roadmap. So we make sure that we align the vision for tool developers, for integrators, the technology, for the users of this, to get everyone get on the same page to understand where we're going and how we're going to get there, and really showcasing the value to them. So Scott, I'll finish up with the last takeaway. Again, a lot of opportunities. The biggest takeaway, at least I'll say personally, is a lot of interest, a lot of thirst for knowledge, tools, best practices, what's been successful, and the need to have somebody that's neutral, technically credible organization, someone like NextFlex, to be able to pull all of this together and showcase really what the opportunities are, share the data, share the models, things like that. That's what the community has sort of, I don't want to make this an ad for NextFlex of, we're the only ones that can do this, but, we are the conveyor in terms of building the US industrial base in hybrid electronics, and pulling together all of these discrete parts to build this industrial base. Really how the next evolution, the next revolution in the industrial base will be because of AI and ML tools. So having a similar organization like NextFlex be the one very well positioned to evaluate these tools, de-risk these tools, be the conveyor to these stakeholders, and really help and spur early adoption. Also, the roadmap intends to help identify areas to invest in. That's what we've done for several years internally at NextFlex with our roadmaps, our technical working group roadmaps, putting together an idea of where investments should be made in the near and far term through things like our project calls. That's what turned into our project call topic in PC10, focused on AI and ML. So understanding where investments should be made more broadly, where opportunities are to have a big impact. And then opportunities like things like shared pilot projects, that the roadmap will really point to that of what are some of those foundational works that show feasibility, and sharing the knowledge and sharing the value in those. And just being a convener of all groups, all interested groups who's looking to adopt and benefit from these new AI tools. So if you go to the next slide, Scott, I think I'll send it back to you. That's a very quick summary of sort of what we got out of our June workshop and additional conversations since then. And I'll let Scott share with you sort of, what's next and how do we plan to tackle some of those opportunities.
All right, thanks, Nick. Great summary of the workshop. We're really motivated by what we've been hearing from the community in all of these discussions that we've had, both in the workshop and before and after. And so we want to announce several things today. Well, two main announcements, and then have a conversation about where we're headed and how we're going to do this. So the first is we're launching a new AI for hybrid electronics webinar series, focusing on all the different aspects that Nick just described coming out of the workshop that we held. So it's going to focus on all those aspects, and really the idea here is to support knowledge sharing across the ecosystem. We've heard very clearly from large companies and small companies and universities and government alike that there is just this lack of knowledge. Everyone agrees about the importance. They see the concepts, but don't necessarily have all of the details. So the idea here is we'll have speakers who are from companies that are developing AI technologies, companies who are applying AI technologies, universities that are developing some of the advanced capabilities in this space throughout this webinar series over the next several months. So focusing on some of the real world applications, as the slide says, in design, materials, process development, manufacturing, testing, automation, hopefully looking at demos and case studies, practical strategies for adoption. So these webinars will be open to both NextFlex members and non-members. We want to make sure that we're advancing the capability of the industrial base broadly. Our mission is not just focused on members, and so making sure that that we are benefiting this community. And today we're announcing the first of those webinars, and that will be held on November 12th at 2 o'clock Eastern, 11 o'clock Pacific. The title of that webinar will be Accelerating Hybrid Electronics R&D with AI Automation, and it'll be presented by Object Tech, small AI startup working on applications in R&D agents across manufacturing. They're doing work in electronics, and we're really excited about having them present this first webinar of a series. We do have 2 more dates on our calendars. We'll be announcing those webinars soon once we really are certain we know the order in which some of the speakers will be speaking. December 3rd and 10th are those 2 dates, and more information will be coming out in the next few weeks about that. So there's a QR code here if you're interested in registering for the first webinar in this series, the one on November 12th by Object, and we look forward to seeing you there. Next, the roadmap that we've been talking about. We talked about the concept for putting together an AI roadmap at our June workshop. Done a lot of work in the time since then on identifying structure, a mechanism to go about doing this. And today we really have a call to action for you. If you are interested in participating in developing this roadmap, contributing to it, helping us to identify some of the details of what goes into it and making sure that we're capturing the most important and relevant information, let us know. We would love to have your participation. We're intending to have both NextFlex members and non-members contribute to developing this roadmap. And we're committed to sharing information from the roadmap across the community. So the purpose here really is to accelerate innovation in AI and ML enabled design, manufacturing, and reliability, looking at all of the different spaces in which AI is going to impact hybrid electronics, already is beginning to. We want to make sure that we're aligning the ecosystem. We want to make sure that we're guiding the strategic investments that NextFlex is making, supporting transition to the DoD into DoD opportunities and their planning operations, as well as the industry's investments that the industry is making. I would love to segment out what are the things in hybrid electronics AI applications that are only going to move if NextFlex pushes them forward and makes some investments versus opportunities that are going to go because there is simply enough of an economic driver that they're going to go on their own. So if we can figure out some of that, it'll really help us to be much more strategic with our investments. We want to make sure that we're identifying those actionable and high impact opportunities. Those are the places that we as a community can come together and really push the technology forward. And then for sure, we want to make sure that we're supporting workforce development and de-risking AI adoption across especially small manufacturers, but we've heard clearly from some very large companies that they're facing the same challenges. And so we could really have a great opportunity in this case. So structure, in terms of the structure of this roadmap, very similar to other NextFlex roadmaps, we'll define a scope. We need to look at what's the background and the state of the art, set out some vision and objectives, look at the technology transition opportunities, the gaps, identify stakeholders. In this space, things like standards and metrics and data infrastructure are going to be absolutely critical. How do we really identify, how these interfaces come together so that existing data can be leveraged and so that it can feed some of the tools that need to implement it? How do those tools intake some of that data and make sense of that data? Implementation timelines. All of our roadmaps look forward to see when it's feasible and practical and when those technologies are needed. And then we want to make sure that we're giving an outlook. This will be the very first AI for hybrid electronics roadmap. And so really saying, what is the future? Where are we headed? What are the opportunities? Those are important elements of this roadmap. All right. So within the roadmap, we'll need to define the technology domains and taxonomies. We've been looking at this already, things like data and knowledge mining, design, process design kits, materials and process optimization, another big space, manufacturing and process controls, testing and reliability, device implementation, and MRL assessments. So these are the segments in which we will be looking at what that state of the art and future opportunities are. Then looking at cross-cutting themes across those different taxonomies. The data infrastructure, as Nick described, the IP and data protection, absolutely vital in this area. Workforce readiness. We can have a great technology, but if the workforce isn't ready to be able to adopt it, then that will obviously slow the adoption. So that's an area to focus on. And then supply chain. Okay, so our next steps. The way we've conceived putting this roadmap together is starting with a steering committee made up largely of NextFlex members, but maybe some non-NextFlex members who are guiding the directions in which the roadmap is going to evolve, and then having domain champions, so members of NextFlex and non-members contributing from our technical working groups, from this ad hoc working group on the AI roadmap, and other stakeholders. We'll map the technical gaps, look at the data sets that we have, look at some pilot opportunities, really discuss all of these things, and then draft an initial roadmap with the goal of completing that initial version of the roadmap in early 2026. So in the next, call it 3 to 4 months. It's an ambitious timeline. We recognize that, but we think it's achievable and are really motivated to push this forward. All right. We also wanted to take the opportunity to describe some other upcoming related opportunities today. There's an upcoming IEEE short course on AI applications in semiconductor packaging. This will be presented by Dr. Pradeep Lal. He's an IEEE fellow, a NextFlex fellow, and the McFarland Endowed Distinguished Professor at Auburn University. It's a 2-hour training. It will be conducted live and archived so that it can be accessed through the IEEE's website. It is for fee. It is not hosted by NextFlex, but we think that it's highly relevant to the topic from today. And so we have a registration link available there on the screen for you if you're interested in that. Other upcoming opportunities. These are definitely for NextFlex members, but since the number of you are on the call, we just want to make sure that NextFlex members are aware of the upcoming technical working group road mapping meetings. These are for our 11 technical working groups that are illustrated on the lower right-hand corner in the manufacturing thrust areas and the technology platform demonstrator areas that we update roadmaps for every year. You can see the calendar of the next working group meetings for each of those working groups that's listed. And this year, we're focusing the meetings on identifying and prioritizing the technical gaps, the tech transition opportunities, the impact of AI and ML within those working group areas, and making investment recommendations. If you're interested for a NextFlex member organization and you as an individual are interested in joining the technical working group, you can contact Nick Morris's emails on the slide. Also for NextFlex members, we have upcoming project webinars. I will absolutely not read these off to you. These are the ones that are scheduled for the months of November and December. There's a possibility we'll add a few still before the end of the year. So if you're not yet receiving invitations to project update webinars, but you'd like to, and you're from a NextFlex member organization, please contact Eliana Schoenberg. Her email address is also on the screen now. And finally, for everyone, Innovation Days 2026. This is NextFlex's annual member meeting and convening of the hybrid electronics community. In 2026, we're trying something new. We'll be hosting Innovation Days in conjunction with TechBlick, the TechBlick organization's Future of Electronics Reshaped conference. That'll be June 9th to 11th in Mountain View, California at the Computer History Museum. We believe that putting these two events together really strengthens both of them and is a great benefit to the community. So we'll have high profile keynotes from the Department of Defense, our partners there, from across the hybrid electronics industrial base, and education and workforce development subject matter experts. We'll have technical presentations, member-only sessions, and networking, as well as you can separately register for the TechBlick Future Electronics Reshaped Conference and see all of the content that they have at that event. So the TechBlick registration is open now. The registration for the NextFlex portion of the event is going to launch in early January. We encourage you all to register for that, and we look forward to seeing you there. All right, at this point, we will end our presentation, and we look forward to taking any questions that the audience has. So Jessica, if you can help us to moderate those questions and unmute speakers as needed to ask their questions, please. All right, I see that we have some questions. All right, one of the simple question that gets asked, of course, all the time, will it be a recording and slides available afterwards? Yes, we have been recording the webinar and it will be available afterwards. Question quite interesting, intellectual property protection to be designed from the outset and not as an afterthought. Take that one as a comment. AI should not take the place of workforce understanding fundamentals. Another comment, absolutely. I don't think any of us view AI as a replacement for humans in this field. I, speaking for myself, view it as a tool that we will use, not as a replacement.
Scott, I think Ahmed has his hand up. Let me see if I can.
Excellent, thank you.
Ask
I
him
can
to
see questions
unmute.
for people, but not both at the same time.
Ahmed, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you. This was very useful, although I was coming late because I had a class before this. So my point is that actually, I think I made that before, and it's a point that we deal with the ink, semi-ink standards and hybrid flexible electronic standard committee, which is Pradeep is on the reliability side, and it's basically the supply chain. You know, I just today, just in meeting my group, the ink that we buy from a company changed again. Different viscosity, different surface tension, everything is different. So we think they changed the suppliers again. So if you develop, LLM, model, which actually we're doing now to look at the coffee ring, for example, in print, every time they change surface tension, they change, the evaporation, they change viscosity, everything changes. So we have to sort of do the learning models over and over every time they change something. And so I'm thinking with this, adoption of AI, which is great. We should do that because it saves us a lot of time if we do that, especially with printed electronics. That in our group, we are actually moving toward making our own ink, which we didn't want to do basically. But because the supply chain changes all the time, we cannot develop a reliable model if we don't know what the initial conditions are. So I think that's something that in general that this project has to deal with, and it's probably not just ink, it's about other materials too, the conductivity, resistivity changes, reliability changes, all that changes. So that's something that I don't have a solution for, except for my group, but I think this has to be looked at the beginning. If we're gonna do AI and develop learning models, to do this, then we need to see, okay, if we have supply chain that's not developed and keep changing things, how are we going to address that? That's my comment, and I need to talk to Pradeep about how he does that.
Yeah. No, thanks, Ahmed. You and I had that trouble with materials changing, carbon nanotube materials changing 10 or 12 years, or 12 or 13 years ago at this point, I believe. And so it's clearly it's an issue that persists. I think there's certainly a need for materials, and being inks in particular, but others as well, being sort of locked down, and when changes occur, to have it really be made clear. That's a supply chain, material supplier issue to deal with. There are a number of ways in which these AI topics that we are discussing, I think can really help with that. So things like automated experimentation, machine learning driven material qualification, AI driven material qualification, and a variety of other approaches they're not going to fix the problem of material changing, but they can certainly help to accelerate maybe the requalification, the testing, and process development to retune perhaps a material. It's not going to be in this field. We recognize that drop-in replacements, at least so far, don't exist, but being able to get back up and running faster is relevant.
So that's one of the things that we're trying to do with the semi-standard. We're trying to require reporting of all these properties. And so the ink supplier basically, they have to report all these properties, surface tension, which they don't now, by the way. All these values that are important actually for printing and for reliability. So we're recommending, we're putting set of parameters or properties that they have to report when they actually sell the ink. So that could help.
Thank you. We have a question that was entered through the questions thread from Carolyn Ellinger. Is the AI roadmap just for AI, or an integrated roadmap for machine learning and AI? Carolyn, thank you for the question. That our intention is to treat it broadly, rather than drawing some kind of artificial boundary between related topics where they clearly interact with each other from a technology standpoint. We'll be looking at it holistically. Nick, I think we've got some other hands raised as well.
Yeah, so Kumu Gupta I see you have I believe you can unmute now. Can you hear us? You should be able to unmute. If not, you might just need to put it into the question pane. Let's see, I think.
Maybe we move on to the next person
Yeah.
and see if Jessica can help with the unmuting.
All right. CMAC, you should be able to unmute.
I managed to do it. Good morning. Thank you for that. Very interesting topic and thought processes on your behalf. But I am ultimately concerned about intellectual property sharing and protection of that. If we are going to have it open and democratized, how are we going to be able to ultimately monetize and protect our own thought process and inventions? And other thing is that, are we going to plan to work with IEEE, for example, and form a standard organization?
Nick, you want to talk about IP, and I'll maybe address the standards question?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good question. It's a good concern, and that's one that was echoed by, I think, all of the attendees of our workshop back in June. So that's something that we take, very seriously, and we need to understand what specific guardrails to put in place. And that's what we've done internally at NextFlex for the few number of AI tools that we've been using, just mostly on business operations, but making sure that we understand the data rights policies of these companies, that are the data that we put in aren't going to train the models that then can go to help other people that are using the tools, or they can sort of back the data back out. So I think it's a combination of being very deliberate and understanding exactly what the risks are, and understanding what we need to put in place to make sure that we don't approach those risks, while still trying to be agile and move rapidly to be able to address the big opportunities. So I think, in short, your concerns are echoed by, I think, everybody else in this area. So I think we need to move carefully and strategically as we look to build out and share the data and the tools.
Is our charter still focused on USA only, or going to include our allies in Europe?
So NextFlex charter is US for the US industrial base. Yes, that doesn't mean we don't want to support our allies, but within the sort of what our focus is for our program is the US industrial base.
Okay, thank you.
If our program sponsors wish to work with other allies, and there have been some activities that have engaged across, say, NATO, for example, we wouldn't have an objection to that. But but we're certainly not going to go outside of the wishes of the program sponsors. All right, so let's see. Kumu Gupta, can you try unmuting again? I think you should be able to at this point. You can ask your questions. Sorry, we're having some trouble here with it. All right. We'll try again. Maybe we'll try to unmute your line on our side. We're not hearing you. Well, while we do that, I will let everyone know that we have a comment that came in from Ben Devaji at Northeastern, letting us know that there is an AI for flexible hybrid electronics event at the Flex 2026 conference. I'm not sure how I can put a comment in with the link to that for the rest of the audience to see, but maybe Jessica can help us with that also. I think there may be a way for us to send a chat to the attendees. We also have a question that's come in, and I'll read off the question. It comes from Audra. It says, we've worked on projects involving closed loop automation, automated labs. How would we share our work as a pilot project? please reach out to us. We would love to find out more about that and understand what information about that you are interested in sharing and with whom. Certainly could be the sort of thing that might become part of the webinar series that we mentioned earlier. And I see Jessica's put the event, the Flex conference event link in the chat. So fantastic. So Audra, looking forward to hearing from you on that. Haven't mentioned your organization just because I'm not sure if you meant for that to go out to everybody. All right, still not able to unmute. Let me see what I can do here. Nick, I don't know if you've
trying to ask to unmute. There's two iterations of the same user.
Ah, maybe that.
I don't know. I think it might be on your end, Kumu. I don't know if it's the device settings.
We've sent the request to ask you to unmute to both of the attendees. Well, apologies that we can't get that to unmute. If you'd like to put them into the questions pane, though, we can. I can read them off for you.
We should use AI to help us with that.
So just pop up a web browser and ask how to handle that problem. All right. Well, while we wait for that, do we have any other hands raised, Nick?
Not that I see. I think we've gotten to everyone.
Okay.
I have a question, Nick. In terms of being able to use AI, I know that we had a policy to refrain from, but are we now open to use it? And what is the policy?
We are not open to use it. To your previous question about being as safe as we can in terms of data and IP, internally at NextFlex, we're sort of doing a very controlled test bed of a couple of accounts of where we can use it in terms with things like business operations, things like that. We're keeping it well controlled right now. Again, understanding the data rights agreements that we have with the tools that we're vetting. Hopefully, the idea would be to make it more broadly available once we understand the risks and the benefits and things like that. But right now, no, still locked down.
So that's a question I aimed at sort of the NextFlex staff. Happy to talk with you offline about that. We do have at least one tool that's available to you. If you request, we'll get the license to protect the IP, but others are, we're still doing some investigation of other tools. All right, so we have. Oh, let's see. Cybersecurity and shipment. I think maybe I'm reading off the second part of a question. Just became world record holder. Microsoft AI got scholarship for cybersecurity SC 900 certificate as semiconductor person looking at ways to use it best in industry. I'm sorry, I don't understand what the question's asking. There are certainly, overall, we recognize, AI is certainly a huge economic piece. The entire stock market seems to be propped up by AI stocks right now, fueling the growth of the market over the past maybe year. What that's going to mean for the future is a little hard to predict. But certainly the economic impact, I think we all agree that it's going to be real. Exactly how real and how big it would require a crystal ball, which I do not have. So we are looking forward to contributing our piece. I think that's the best I can say in response to the questions or comments that we just got. All right, well, we are coming up rapidly on the end of the hour. And so unless we hear some additional questions, I think we will end the webinar now. Thank you for attending. We really appreciated having you here. Hope that you found this interesting and useful. I've gotten a few messages that have popped up just while we've been talking from folks that are interested in participating in the road mapping activity. So thank you very much. We will get back to you on those. For more information, NextFlex website is identified there. You can also contact us through the info@nextflex.us for general inquiries. We look forward to talking with many of you again very soon. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.